people are dealing with are just exploding, whether you're dealing with credit card debt, payday loans, which we don't have so much of in New York, thankfully, but in other parts people are struggling with those kinds of sort of fringe loans, very expensive, 500% payday loans, mortgage, subprime mortgages, dealing with foreclosures, and they're coming out of, so for one, they're dealing with all of this high cost debt. Their credit reports, by and large, are shot. People are coming out of foreclosures or just struggling with credit cards, and it impacts their credit reports, which creates a cycle where now they're not going to be able to get a better loan to get out of that abusive loan. And credit reports now, as I'm sure you all know, are used not only for credit decisions, but in housing decisions. Landlords and management companies want to see credit reports. We work at our organization with seniors who've been on waiting lists for subsidized housing for years, and when they get up to the plate and it's their turn for an apartment, they're being turned down because they have more than like $2,000 in debt on their credit reports. And even though their income is Social Security and it's protected from debt collection and so forth, they're still turned down from housing. So it's a big issue there. Employers are checking credit reports, insurance companies, and so forth. So what, can you talk a little bit, what are the implications for people? Because it's not just now, okay, I'm dealing with a bad credit card and debt, but it's your whole, range of opportunities is now going to be curtailed in many cases because of this explosion of credit, which was often irresponsible and high priced from my point of view. So how do you all sort of contend with that when you're working with clients and advocates and so forth?
Depending on what a customer is aiming to do, what their financial goal is, and that could be, it can be a housing situation where a landlord is examining a payment history regardless of what the score is. But it can also, I think, and maybe more often than not, whatever financial goal they're aiming towards has a lot to do with the actual score. And prior to maybe about 6 months ago, or maybe more like 9 months ago, we took a very traditional, what does the FICO pie chart look like, and paying down debt along with keeping respectable 1/3 balances was the way that you improved your score. And
can you explain that? I don't know that everyone gets it.
People, if FICO, Fair Isaacson Company is the keeper of kind of what's considered the standard credit score. You go to myfico.com and you can get your, for fee, you can get what FICO considers your credit score to be. People familiar with FICO? Good. And then so they pretty easily accessible on their website in their financial education section. They have a nice little pie chart on what a credit score is comprised of. The actual calculation, of course, being more secretive than the Coca-Cola formula, but they give you a sense of what it is, and certainly paying down debt is a component of that. And just through some work we've been doing with other practitioners in the field, we're starting to wonder if that is a bit misleading, and how in cahoots maybe FICO is actually in with the debt collection industry, and that perhaps for debts that are in collections, that accessing new lines of credit is a much faster route to improving a score than paying off old debt. Am I saying something you guys are familiar with?
This is what we've been working on.
Yes. Oh, really?
Confirming of our.
What organization are you with?
Axiom.
Great. So I'd love to chit-chat with you guys afterwards, because we're actually doing a study. In working with these other practitioners, no one had any proof of this. It was just kind of anecdotal evidence, and so...
The Credit Builders Alliance?
And Vicki doesn't have evidence either, which is kind of surprising that this is becoming this trend, but yet no statistical anything. So we've done a lowercase s study, just taking about 13 of our customers over the last, about 3 months ago, and breaking them down into 3 different groups and asking them to ignore debt, debt that's in debt collections, accessing new credit as one group. We have a control group, lowercase c, not random signing, and then a group in which we've taken a more traditional approach and paying down and working with those collection agencies. And so we're just pulling the 3-month scores right now, but we'll do that at 6 and 12 months. And one of the most fascinating things that's come out of that is that even people with such disastrous debt, we've had about 3 people that were denied secured credit. Because one was a check systems and one was a thin file and one was a disastrous credit history. So it's been
so not even a secured credit card where they're actually putting the money up front in exchange for getting a credit line of that
so a
amount.
customer comes to the bank and says, here's $300, please give me a $300 credit card, and the bank is saying no. So I think that at least somewhere a little bit more than anecdotally, but not quite steady, at least points to, I think, a need for these products on a much greater scale. But I'll keep you guys posted on where we're going with that.
Interesting. Do you have anything to add on that?
Well, it's just kind of interesting on reacting to this and sort of thinking about, moving that to the next level. We've just we've just done this sort of series of very small grants for groups to be pulling credit scores at 6-month intervals. I wonder if there's not some way that we could be thinking about taking your small S study and actually we're in with the groups that will be regularly pulling credit scores if we don't want to be asking some additional information about, probably not to the extent that you're actually constructing the pilot around it, about the different recommendations of how they handle the debt in these 3 different groups, but at least trying to figure out what these folks did differently in that period in between those 6-month goals.
Because given where you guys are at, that could definitely be a capitalized study.
Yes, we can do.
Capitalize.
Get a few more. If we get a couple more, get a large enough sample size, it becomes a capitalist.
Yeah.
All right, good. Well, why don't we open it up now to questions or discussion? Yep.
Well, one thing I was thinking of is, it seems like a lot of the people who are seeking, I think it's a lot of people, I guess you're pitching it to people, but it seems that there are people who are willing or seeking this kind of information. So what about people who work a couple jobs, they're older, don't have access to the internet, don't speak English? Those are the people I'm thinking of, like in my head, my family, and etc., who would probably benefit from these things, but have no idea, or probably don't have the time or commitment. So how do you help bring education to those people?
I'll just sort of say one of the ways that we've been trying to sort of push this kind of stuff out in New York City is, we've been really trying to think from the very beginning of what is a value add of a city government having an office like ours that's working on this. And one of the things that we've really been trying to do is to be pushing out financial counseling into city service delivery. And so for different populations, that's going to be different. There's different ways that different populations are interacting with the city. And for some populations, they probably are barely interacting with the city government. So it's certainly not for not the way to get to everybody. But we've been working with our Department of Homeless Services. So people who are going for emergency cash assistance. We want to get those folks understanding that there's opportunities to get financial counseling. People who are in shelter, who are getting employment and are being subsidized to move out of shelter, we want to make sure those folks are getting financial counseling during the course of time that they're being subsidized in their housing, so that then they're able to take on the cost of maintaining themselves in the housing beyond once the subsidy drops off. So that's sort of like in one agency how we're figuring out ways to push it out. We're working with workforce development centers where people are coming looking for jobs and making sure that it's clear that they know they can be getting financial counseling. We're working with foreclosure prevention groups who need, half the time on the workout plans, you need very good sort of detailed money, a money management process, and you need to have sort of a clear sense of how you're going to be able to pay down the mortgage, eventually even, if the loan is modified. So being able to integrate it that way. Even things as basic as having financial counselors at senior centers. So for elderly populations that are not necessarily